What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. Welcome to episode 2 of the podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Nick and Sam Riccio. They are phenomenal investors in the Boston market and owners of Eagle Hill Properties. Nick is also a loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. There is so much to be learned from the both of them in this episode, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode. What's going on, guys? I'm here today with Nick and Sam Riccio. I'm sorry.
There you go.
And they're from Reno's Real Estate on Instagram. I'm interviewing them, seeing what their story is, and we'll go from there. So what got you guys into real estate, and what's your backstory? What's your story?
Yeah, so we started back in 2017. We got our first property then, and we had wanted to get into real estate, I think, probably from the time we were 17, 18 years old. Just loved the idea of passive income, creating wealth through real estate, and more than just our jobs that we would be working. So we had a passion for it really early, and once we graduated college, we tried to build out a plan that would lead us to our first property. And then, like I said, we were able to get our first one in 2017.
That's awesome. So you guys knew kind of straight out of college that's kind of the route that you wanted to take?
Nick more so than me, but he definitely was headstrong about it.
What did you guys take in college? Did that kind of have an impact on that, or was that it was just kind of a thing you wanted to do?
Yeah, I studied marketing. Nick did business. That definitely helped a little bit, probably from the business aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But it was one of those things that nobody in our family had done it. Nobody we really knew was doing it. So it's definitely a leap of faith from our side. It's not like we saw anyone with a great track record that we were like, oh, we want to, mimic that. But the more kind of Nick read about it, learned about it, and, was pulling me into it, we realized the power of it. And then from there, it kind of was just we were headstrong. That's what we were doing. And we just had to figure out how to make it happen.
That's awesome. It's going to be sweet to be the first generation, in your families. I get that. Start for everybody.
Yeah, it's good and bad. That now everyone sort of understands what we're doing. But starting out, I think everyone kind of thought we were crazy and didn't really understand what we were doing. So it's definitely its pros and cons.
I feel that. I totally feel that. What is your drive and vision for the long term? What's your why?
That's a hard one. The reason is because I feel like it changes so constantly, especially with the market that we're living in. So I feel like in our free time when we're not working, all we're doing is talking about the future and our why and what we want to do and why we want to do it. But we feel like that, at least lately, has just been changing so much, which is a good thing because it's good to be able to kind of pivot. But long term, we see ourselves in this industry, but we really want to focus on buy and hold rental properties. We feel like once we can build a good amount of wealth through that, I love the design aspect, which is tough with rentals. You can get to a good point of a high-end rental, but there's a cap where it's let's just do subway tile because, it's going to be a rental property. So we'd love to get into flipping or, condo conversions and things of that nature. But Nick can probably elaborate more too on that.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'd add, I think our why is, it's cliche, right? But we want to create wealth, generational wealth for our family. And we've always wanted to be able to give our kids things that, we didn't necessarily have growing up, or not have to struggle about the things that normal, average families struggle over. It's expensive world. It's expensive to have kids and all of those things. So I think, we're just really working to position ourselves to not have as many of those stressors and to just make sure we're able to give, our children and family things that, we think they deserve and that it shouldn't be a huge stressor for them.
Yeah, I totally get that. I like that a lot, actually. To be able to give your kids the things that you never had. I totally feel that. That's awesome. All right. Would you mind telling the story of acquiring your first property and like any lessons or like anything big that you learned from it? Like anything huge that kind of stuck out?
Yeah. Well, I think we can probably dovetail it into like our first two properties because I think the story makes better sense that way. So, like we said, starting out, we had really wanted to get into multifamily investing. Um, when we were starting in like 2017, not that it's much different now, but the market was scorching hot. It was really hard to get in multifamilies, especially that was really the start or the early days of everyone looking to do condo conversions. So getting into multifamilies for buy and hold was really challenging because people who were looking to convert them, could pay a higher premium than we could looking for cash flow.
Right.
So it was super hard. We were banging our heads against the wall, getting really frustrated that we couldn't find anything. And then randomly one day we were just walking around East Boston. I think we had looked at a property and then we were like, screw it, let's walk around and see what's going on. Walked into this open house for a brand new 1-bed, 1-bath condo, everything we said we didn't want. And like within 24 hours, we were under agreement and purchased it. Which is funny because it's like we had a plan and then we deviated it for some reason. But within 6 months of owning that condo, we were then under contract to purchase the 3-family that was adjoining to the condo. So it was interesting. Like we are kind of believers of like that things tend to happen for a reason. And now it's funny to look back at like we bought this condo that we did not want. We had our plan, completely went away from it, but then it led to our first multifamily, which is what we really wanted.
That's awesome. That's so crazy that like that's how the first one happened. Like I totally agree with you that everything happens for a reason, and that's nuts.
Yeah, it was
You know,
great.
it's that's crazy how it resulted in like what you actually wanted. Like even though you kind of deviated a little bit from it, that's so crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's been a fine rental for us. We bought it in East Boston, which for those that don't know, it's a really appreciating market over the last few years. So I mean, it's turned out totally fine.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't our intentions at the time.
That's great. All worked out so far. What would you consider to be the biggest variable to work on to expand your portfolio? Like, building your network or marketing, running numbers on properties, like staying consistent. Like if you kind of had to pick like one central like variable, I know it's kind of hard, but like one really big thing to focus on, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think it probably varies person by person too. Like for me, I think it was the networking aspect of it, which I bet a ton of people say. But the reason being is, especially when we were just starting out, our families were like a little confused at what we were doing. I was at a W-2 job and they kept asking like what my long-term goals were. And I wanted to be like, well, not here. Like, I want to be in real estate. So I definitely, me, probably even more so than Nick, but both of us together had that like imposter syndrome of like, what are you doing? Where do you fit in? Are you like, going to work every day and pretending that this is what you want to do and spending your days daydreaming about real estate and looking at properties and analyzing deals. So for me, the networking really opened up kind of the horizons of like, you can do this, A, and B, there's so many people like you that are, you know, only are starting out, especially in that time. Maybe they only have one property, but you know, they're going to real estate meetups, they're present on social media, and that's what made us start our social media accounts. We didn't have anything until this year. And I was like, okay, I guess it's time, we should probably do something. But that all kind of stemmed from the networking of it, and surrounding ourselves with like-minded people and learning from others. And I really feel like that helped us feel empowered and feel like, you know, we can do it. And also, obviously, the relationships that we've built have helped us tremendously, just even from like a bouncing ideas off each other type of standpoint.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. Like just the like meeting different people, and like the amount of doors that open up is so crazy. And like oh, sorry.
No, the only thing I was going to add is like, I think a lot of times people get too wrapped up in like the technical aspect, and we would get wrapped up in it and still do today. But I think really the only barrier, in my opinion, in this industry is mindset, right? So at the end of the day, it's fairly simple math that we have to do, and most of the times the computer is doing it for us anyways. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do it. All things like finding properties, capital, making sure like you can run the numbers correctly. Like that's not too difficult, but if you make yourself think that it's too difficult, you know, that's where you get into trouble.
That's so important. I mean, really, you're totally right. Like even like the networking can stem from the mindset. Like if you believe that like, you know, like you're equivalent with like the people that, you know, are like-minded and stuff, and like you're not like lesser because you don't know anything, like that kind of thing. I feel like it all stems from the mindset. Like believing that you can run the numbers, or, you know, believing that, you know, you're worthy enough to meet some of these people and have these conversations, you know, believing that you could take on a project. Like I feel like that's so important. Like it all kind of stems from that.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Ooh, what is the most important lesson that you've learned over your real estate career so far?
Uh, so personally, I'd probably stick with that general premise. I think um, I think I struggle, and I know a lot of people struggle with that, of thinking, to your point, that maybe they're not as smart as the guy who's having success, or they don't have, I don't know, they don't have the resources that, you know, the guy down the street has. And I think once you get to the point where you understand like that what you're doing is good, and you understand where you're at and how you want to get to the next level, I think that's the biggest thing. So I think, again, you can easily trick yourself into thinking you're not ready or now's not the right time. And I think there's never the right time. So once you just decide that you're going to take action, I think, you know, that's probably the biggest thing, is just committing to taking action.
Yeah, we always would say, I mean, even in the beginning when we bought the condo, I was like, I think, or Nick asked me, or I asked him, one or the other, like, are you ready for this? And the answer was like, no, I'm not ready for this. And we still think about that now. And when the opportunity came up to purchase the 3-family, it's like we had just purchased our first home, and now we're purchasing a building that needs extensive renovation, and we had to live through that renovation. So we lived in the like absolute chaos. And it was another like, are you ready? And it was like, no, I'm not ready. Like, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to Nick's point of like, it's never going to feel like, okay, now's the right time to take the jump. You just have to trust yourself, and also, you know, be okay with taking a bit of a risk. And then now I think if you asked us for the next project that we took on, if we were ready, my answer would be yeah. Because now it's like, we know whatever comes our way, we'll just figure out. It might be things we've never dealt with before, but you get a little bit of confidence after the first or second deal.
That's such a crazy transition from going from like being so terrified and like not ready at all to being able to, be ready for that challenge and know that you can handle it. And like, the people that can help you take care of that. That's that's so crazy. Um, what are the most effective resources that have helped you most far on your journey? Or like, um, yeah, like books or like meeting different people and being able to have them answer your questions, like that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
what's the most important?
So
um
I say this, but it's so cliche because this is literally what everybody says. But the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, was the one that Nick, when we were younger, prior to purchasing any property, handed to me, and he was like, "Please just read this. Like, I beg you." And I was like, oh, no, I don't really feel like it. Like, I don't want to read like a business book. Like, I don't know, probably on vacation or something. I'm like, I just, want to read a novel. But no, I read it, read through it, I think, in 2 days. And that book for me opened my eyes to the power of real estate. And I know so many people say that, but I think it completely changed my mindset. We now read it every year at least once. Sometimes I'll read it twice. If I'm feeling a little discouraged, I'll go back to it. But at least once a year, we'll both reread it, because I think it's really important, and it does such a great job of breaking down the simplicity of it. It's not as terrifying as it seems, and building a business isn't as terrifying as it seems, and all of that. So that was a huge mind shift, change for me personally.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think just being open to putting yourself out there, I think, and that can be in a number of ways, whether, right now there's not a lot of like in-person networking going on, but, when the world resumes, I think just going out networking, I think even putting your work out on social media and on different platforms, I think it's been a huge return for us in so many ways. Like now we meet people, talk to people, and you feel like you already know them. Like, us, for instance, we've never met, but we feel like we know each other. Same
yep
thing for a lot of other folks that we now like. It's easier to get a meeting or take a meeting with someone because they feel like they kind of know us and they believe in what we're doing. And I think even some of our work, like we put a lot of our work out there, and we've had people reach out being like, "What the hell are you doing?" or "Why are you doing it like that?" It's and for it would be easy to feel like insulted or nervous or whatever, but people are trying to help, and it's a good learning lesson. So I think just being open to sharing and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable is a huge opportunity.
I totally agree with you. It's an honor to have you guys on the podcast and being able to like, I mean, I've watched your story for a while, and like it's just nuts, like watching put down a carpet after like not doing it before. And like I would have never known about that if you guys weren't on social media.
Right.
I feel like that's the same with a lot of other people too. Like you don't really know unless you put yourself out there. Like you
Right.
never really know what can happen and who you can meet and that kind of thing. And it's great you say that about Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that's the one that started me as well and got into everything. And like I like to tell everybody about it. And to Zach and Miranda, you know who you are. They a couple of my friends bought the book and they haven't read it. You guys heard that? You guys heard that story? All right, read it. I'm calling you out. But yeah, honestly, you're totally right though, and it's great to read that book like once a year, just to get a nice little refresher on it. Um, that book is totally worth its weight in gold,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the information is just insane. I think I paid $8 for that book or something, and it'll probably be the best thing I've ever spent money on. Honestly, it started everything.
Definitely.
Ooh, what is something that you thought about business, networking, or wealth creation that changed as you went along?
Um, I would probably say that it's a lot easier than you think. Even from, I would say, I mean, we talked a lot about the networking and all that, so I won't harp on that. But I think even like the wealth building piece, um, you know, when you think like, if you're thinking at like a smaller level, and we're guilty of it. When we're feeling small and thinking small, it's like, well, how are we going to get there? In our mind, it's like, well, it's going to take years. It's going to take this or that. And then again, once we open up our thoughts and our mind and kind of remove some of the fake barriers that we think are there, like the wealth building is actually not very difficult. Especially with real estate and leverage and things like that. I mean, if you're calculated and taking action, I mean, it happens quickly, like really quickly. So I think it's just thinking bigger than probably what we're accustomed to doing.
Yeah, and I think off of that too is, for me, probably more than Nick, was just the idea of money in general. Nick always says to me, like, there's so much money to be made. Money's cheap. And I 5 years ago would be like, what do you mean? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But now I see that, and the idea of, we haven't done this quite yet, but just raising capital, getting partners, it's things we talk about a lot. Having people invest with you. 5 years ago, I would have ran at that thought, and now we're talking about implementing it. So I think changing your mindset around and everyone grew up differently, but I definitely grew up in a, take your $20, put it in the bank and get $20.05 in 5 years. And I was okay with that. I was like, great, 5 cents, it's free. But there's so many other ways, to Nick's point, to build wealth, and so many things or, avenues you can take to make your money work for you. It's definitely a different way of thinking than, how we both were raised. And getting into that mindset has really helped us be able to think bigger, which I feel like is kind of goes in tandem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. That's like a whole nother, I guess, transition,
Right.
into a totally different state. Your mindset's definitely a huge part of that. And, it should be changing as you go along. I mean, because if you have the same mindset, from 5 years ago, then you probably aren't really advancing that much.
Right.
Yeah. As long as you have the open-mindedness and, be able to adapt to roll with the punches, I guess, and keep improving, then that's really important. What is your best piece of advice to new investors that want to start and manage their rental portfolio?
Okay, so I'm not going to say networking because you are 12 times. Best piece of advice would be, well, so I'm going to actually tie this into being in an expensive market like Boston, because, or, Massachusetts in general, there's different areas, but I feel like I have, a lot of friends, family, we're all kind of in this expensive market, seeing the crazy homes go for so much above asking. So I think for somebody that's really serious about investing, especially if you're in an expensive market and all over the country, is we're huge advocates of house hacking. And we believe it's single-handedly the best way to get started investing. I think, and for those who don't know, house hacking basically is meaning that you're using your investment as your primary residence. So whether it's a single family and you're renting out a second room to a roommate, or it's a 3-family building and you live in one unit and you rent out the other 2 to subsidize your living costs. But we feel that in an expensive market, you can get in low down payment, 3.5% down. That's amazing. You're able to live in the property and then, if need be, slowly do renovations if you have to do that. So you live in the first unit and you renovate it for 6 months, and then you move to the second unit, and you know what I mean? It gives you that flexibility where it's not a vacant building that you have to hurry up and renovate in 8 months, or else, your holding costs are going to kill you.
Yeah.
And then also, I think it helped us early on learn how to be landlords. I mean, living with your tenants is tough. especially your first time being a landlord. I wouldn't say that it's something we want to do forever, but I think it taught us a lot. And it was kind of like one of those things where you talk about doing something for so long and you're like, this is what I want. I'll do anything to have it. And then you get it and it might be a little difficult. It's kind of being like, well, how bad do you want it? You know what I mean? Yeah, you might be living in a crappy apartment that you have to lay down the floor tile and put a little elbow grease, and you have tenants upstairs that are giving you a hard time. But if you can get through that means you got it to be an investor.
That's great. That's so valuable. Especially after like discovering Biggerpockets and like the idea of house hacking. Like I couldn't imagine just buying like a regular kind of like forever home, I guess you could say. And like that's not a bad thing. It's just that's a different mindset in itself. A forever home versus a rental.
Totally.
Like they're totally like two different things. Um, but yeah, that's so true though. I can't wait to get my first house hack and start that all up. But you're totally right though. Because then, I mean, depending on what your plan is, you get into your property, you do the year or, couple years, whatever you decide to do. If you wanted to live in it, own or occupy it, put your renovations and fix it up and stuff. And then you have your tenants, like build an equity and stuff for you. And it's so valuable. It's crazy. What is a common myth about building a portfolio that you want to debunk? Like, what's something that like a lot of people think that like after like doing it, you can kind of tell like isn't true, you know? Like bad advice, I guess you could say.
So there's a ton, uh,
Yep.
but I guess to be probably go away from what we've been talking about. I think, um, I think one of them is like we always get, oh well, you're gonna like, you're gonna get the call at 2 in the morning to fix the toilet or this or that. Everyone has a reason about why being a landlord is a bad idea.
Usually they're not landlords.
No.
Totally. Yep.
And I think the other thing people forget is like, you don't have to be a landlord to invest in real estate. Like, if you don't want to be a landlord, that doesn't mean you can't invest in real estate. Like, you can use property management. There's a million avenues you can do. So I think people who are just like, well, I can't invest in real estate, or I'm not investing in real estate because I don't want to have those phone calls. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about all the ways to not have that be an issue. But I just think for people who will actually want to get into real estate, but their fear is being the landlord, I think a lot of the concerns are not real. I mean, let's be honest. Obviously, there are a ton of issues being a landlord. Like, you do have those concerns, but just a lot of the ones that people bring up, I think are false. And I also think if that's your concern, but you want to invest in real estate, just don't be a landlord.
That's so important. I feel like people don't really like look into it enough. That's just kind of like the far away kind of opinion, I guess you could say. Like I hear it everywhere, you know what I mean? Like you hear it from a ton of different people. And that's definitely a really important factor is to be careful who you get your advice from and what you actually act on. Because I mean, a lot of people never really, are landlords or anything, but they want to give you advice like why not to. Like,
Right.
are you serious? Like,
Friends and family, when you tell them,
exactly.
and they're like, I mean, we got it up and down 100 times over, and
Yep.
at that point you hadn't done it before, and maybe you weren't as educated, so we weren't saying to each other, there's property management companies, or like it won't be as bad, it was more just like, oh God, and they're just instilling fear in you. And I think that also ties back to like why you're so petrified the first time around. It's because 95% of people, which I mean, it's human nature, it's completely different than what they're used to, and it's completely, it's like a totally different road than they've ever gone down. So they're looking at you like giving you all the reasons why it's not going to work, and it's not out of a bad place. It's out of concern and doubt, and I see that. But I think there was a point in the beginning where Nick and I looked at each other and were like, okay, nobody's advice, nobody's, opinions matter unless they've done it. And right there, it was like, first of all, we at that point had spoke to nobody who has done it before. So that was that, which, I mean, now looking back, there's your networking piece that we'd strongly recommend. But I mean, then it was like, okay, well, who cares? They've never done it. So why are we listening so hard to them too?
Yeah. And I would just echo that like most of it's not from a bad place. Like family is definitely not from a bad place, and even friends. I don't think they're necessarily like trying to like hold you back or put you down. I mean, I think that's out there, but I don't think that's the majority. But I think they're worried about your well-being because they've heard horror stories and things like that. So I think it's important that like it's not people are trying to like protect you or act in your best interest, but if they don't know, then they don't know.
You're right. Totally. That's so important. Definitely, take that into consideration. Like really with anything, if you're wanted to get into something, if you wanted to start a business or something, and, you heard from the guy down the street that like, oh, I know a guy that was trying to do the same thing and like it was a disaster. And, are you really going to follow that? Or, are you going to actually try it yourself and see what happens and do things different? That's really important. Just be careful where you get your advice and, what advice you follow. Our last question here. Do you guys read? And what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone?
So I already answered mine, but I'm sticking to my guns. Two friends who need to read the book. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all the way.
Totally.
So yes, we do. We read a lot. I just started a new book. I'm not too far into it, but it's been like incredibly helpful for me. It's Traction, and it's helpful for me because I am, and I don't know the author, otherwise I would throw it out there, but it's helpful for me because I'm easily distracted. I'm easily, I thrive off creating ideas and then not really implementing them. So it's helped me, along with Sam, to start to stay focused in my business, in our business, and because it's easy to get lost. I mean, there's abundance out there, so you can get lost in ideas, and a lot of them may be great ideas, but not implementing them is the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll definitely have to write that one on the list. I get that. But yeah, definitely great books. Again, Miranda and Zach, just saying. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This is huge, especially after watching you guys progress like on Instagram, and it's so nuts. Where can you guys be reached the best? I know Instagram is one, but
yeah, so Renos and Real Estate on Instagram, and then our website is eaglehill-properties.com, and we're populating that with blog posts and things like that, some updates on the houses, so that's where you can find us.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, you're a loan officer now, I believe?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm a loan officer, so with Fairway Independent Mortgage. So anyone have any questions, you can find me at Nick_Riccio, RICCIO_, or at www.
You don't have to say www anymore. Old people.
buyrefywithnick.com.
Good job.
Yeah, guys, definitely give them a follow. It'll be totally worth your time. It's watching them progress is insane. It's really good. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Again, it really means a lot. I look forward to keep watching you guys do your thing and keep acquiring properties and keep moving.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a good day.
All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far.
It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.